I'm going off schedule yet once again because we're going to be talking about The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. The Warrens are back to investigate a murder that might be linked to demonic possession that took place in the 1980s. I won't go into any spoiler territory. I'm just going to go off what you see in the trailer and give my opinion on what I liked and what I did not like about the movie. The movie does open up with a young boy being possessed at home, and the Warrens are there to investigate and also determine whether the boy needs to be exorcised or not. As the Warrens and a priest are conducting the exorcism, we're seeing a bunch of exorcism cliches. We are then seeing a contortionist. We're seeing, like, change of the eyes, some different voices, and, objects moving around. And the exorcism is done at that point. However, shortly after, a murder takes place. Not with the little boy, however, with another character that was involved in that household. And basically at that point, we are being told that that character that performed the murders, and basically that the devil made them do it, and possibly might be linked to this possession that took place earlier in the film. The Conjuring 3, The Devil Made Me Do It takes a different perspective on how these films are done. Instead of focusing on the family and on the location of where all this activity took place, it's focusing on the Warrens and how they investigate and how all these things are linked together. The family basically takes a back seat and we're just focusing on Ed and Lorraine and then the process itself and what they're doing. And in this film, instead of focusing on the house or wherever the haunting is taking place, this is more spread out. We see a lot of travel between Ed and Lorraine to one location to another to try to make the connections. So that's something different. And I do think that's actually not a bad idea. But director and writer James Wan was not part of this third Conjuring film. He also did the previous two Insidious films. However, he was not involved in this one. He did do some of the writing. I don't know why he was not involved in this one. He might be working on another project. So he got the director of the film, La Llorona, to take over the directing of this. As you can tell by my reaction, I was not a fan of that movie. The folklore was already made for them. They didn't have to recreate anything. However, they missed the mark by so much. It was basically a CGI fest, lazy jump scares, and it just took away from something that could have been really good. That movie could have been shot in Mexico or shot somewhere to look like Mexico. It could have a lot more Latin actors, but no, it did not do that. It kind of just did the lazy approach of the story of La Llorona, but it just basically threw whatever leftover scraps were left from, any other Conjuring or Insidious movie. So when James Wan announced, oh, I'm gonna leave the directing duties to this director, I was like, ooh, that might be a bad sign. That worries me. However, I went into this movie thinking, hey, maybe they'll prove me wrong. However, I was not proven wrong. The scares are very obvious. We've seen most of the big scares and most of the big scenes in the trailer itself. And even those scenes are like, whatever. They're kind of generic. The waterbed scene, there was a shot that they used in the trailer. It's basically the same shot that they use in the movie. And it already looks like a bad CGI shot. I mean, I was watching, I was like, well, maybe they'll do something different for the actual theatrical version. However, no, it's no surprise. You know what's gonna happen before it even happens. We saw it in the trailer, they gave it away. And when I'm watching it, I was like, God, this could have been done a lot better. I was like, it looks like a very obvious green screen shot. I was like, why couldn't they just get some spandex? I was like, why is it that the scene from Nightmare on Elm Street Part 1 from the 80s, when Freddy's coming out of the wall, why does that scene look a lot better than this that was made today? This film doesn't have as many shots like that like Curse of La Llorona did, where it was like heavy on the CGI and they seemed like they were dependent on that. So thankfully this film did not have a lot of it, but it does have some in there. And I was like, when it's CGI, it does not look scary at all. It's almost not worth it. It's almost like you should just either not do it or just go the practical way, because at least that looks more effective. Like I was mentioning earlier in the previous Conjuring films, we do get a look at the families that are involved in each of these films. And you do feel some kind of connection with them, and you do not want anything bad to happen to them because they are likable characters. However, in this film, since we're not really focusing on any of the families at all, there's no real connection. So you're kind of like, oh, sucks for you. So when we get to the character that's claiming that the devil made them do it, there's no real connection because we're barely focusing on him. On his character, we're barely focusing on that, and we're barely focusing on the character of his girlfriend. So there was times in the movie I was like, who's that? I forgot who that was. I was like, is that the Warren's daughter or is that the girlfriend? I forgot. So when the film does start to focus on those characters again, it's kind of like, I'm not invested into them at all. I don't know anything about them. I don't really care. I'm focusing on this guy's bad wig that he's wearing or the bad hair. And throughout the movie, the Warrens are constantly saying, oh, this is the worst case yet. We've never seen anything like this. And I'm like, how is this the worst case? This is probably the most boringest case that you've ever done. I was even thinking like, how is this worse than Valak, the devil nun, being in your house? Or how is it worse than Bathsheba sitting in your room with Annabelle on her lap? I was like, how is this worse? I was like, this is no in any way worse than that. This film will do that every so often. It'll be like, I've never done this before in my life. And it's like, did you not watch part 1 and part 2? This felt more like an episode of like a made-for-TV movie where the Warrens jump in their mystery machine to try to solve a case. If this was a 1-hour episode of something to lead up to a bigger movie, I think it would be worth it, but it's not. It's a full hour and a half, almost 2-hour movie. It's not boring. The time does go by fast at least, but you're kind of like, dang, it's going by fast, and yet there's no big scares. All the big scares that are supposedly big, we saw in the trailer. The positives. I do like seeing Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson together as the Ed and Lorraine characters. I feel like their chemistry is great. I like seeing them together. To stay on the positive note, the soundtrack is good. The soundtrack is really good. The villain in this film is actually pretty good as well. I would like to see more of that villain somehow sprinkled throughout the franchise. Just maybe with a better director or better writing. I think that's something that could be done in a later film. So now that there's a Conjuring universe, I feel like it's getting more filled with bad movies than good. I feel like the good movies are basically a minority at this point. With Curse of La Pendeja, as I like to call it, and the bad Annabelle sequels, the bad Nun movie, the good ones are getting overpopulated by all the bad movies, basically. The Conjuring, The Devil Ate the Better Director, is actually currently streaming right now on HBO Max. If you have HBO Max, I would suggest watching it there. It is not worth the full ticket price. However, if you do not have HBO Max, and if you are a Regal Crown Club member, on Sundays, you could go pay the cheaper price, because for Regal Crown Club members, there's actually a discount day on Sundays, so it's basically matinee fees all day long. If you're an AMC Stub member, I believe it's on Tuesdays, where it's basically the same thing, where it's the lower price. I think it is Tuesdays for AMC, don't quote me, but I'm almost 100% sure. Really do want to see this movie in the theater. Like I said, if you're Regal or AMC, look for the discount days or just go to the matinee times, because this movie is not worth you spending your hard-earned money on full price. Not only full price for popcorn and all the other stuff that's there. So yeah, I'm trying to save you some money because you'll probably be walking out disappointed. Hopefully my review wasn't too harsh. I was just being honest. I'm not getting paid for this, so I'm trying to save people some money, or try to figure out a way to save some people some money. So this movie is okay. It's not great. I'm going to give Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, a C. Hopefully you like what you see here. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. I'm Mike the Movie Misfit, and I'll see you at the movies.
Get more out of life. Go out to a movie.